Holocaust survivors Dr. Ruth Westheimer, Tova Friedman, and Ruth Mermelstein. And we're joined by a man who is dedicated to reversing the tide of hate, and he is trying awfully hard to achieve that. Meet Bill Tinglin. He's a longtime Holocaust advocate, education advocate. He's behind an initiative called A Tour for Tolerance. The idea is to transform a bus into a high-tech classroom and bring lessons of fighting hate. Good to have you with us, Bill. Tell us about this program. What are you doing? You've been out there trying to reverse that tide.
Indeed. There are less than 40,000 Holocaust survivors remaining in New York. And it is our mission now to get Holocaust survivors and their liberators to see 400,000 high school kids and 379,000 middle school kids here in New York. How do we plan to do that? Our bus. We're converting the buses into high-tech classrooms for the teaching of tolerance, empathy, compassion, and inclusion. And it's just a matter of time that we'll be able to have the first bus to see 50,000 students per year. When
you want a fleet of these buses?
Absolutely.
I think we have a video which very graphically shows once the students are on the bus, this is what it would be like.
And as the scene moves, they are seeing something shocking from history. We will be looking at the Holocaust, the internment of the Japanese, the Civil Rights Movement, Rwanda, Somalia, different moments in history where intolerance led to atrocities. In the second part, students will virtually interview the witnesses and the subjects of atrocities to talk about how they felt, what they were afraid of, how they found the courage to resist and to survive.
Shalom Aleichem, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Shmoozing with Avi. Today, our guest is a very special man who I am honored to have on the show. His vision is a peaceful, humane world that respects human dignity among all people. His mission is to promote tolerance and our common humanity and the importance of individual and civic responsibility among youth of all backgrounds. My guest, Bill Tinglin's visionary leadership, has been transforming society since his founding of the School News Nationwide network in 1993 by implementing his concept of student-produced newspapers, magazines, and television broadcasts. Bill Tinglin is the founder of the Tour for Tolerance, which brings tolerance education directly to schools and other youth-serving venues. Bill brought Jewish Holocaust survivors and African-American seniors into schools and other public venues where, using his SNN technology, they were interviewed and videotaped by the students. And this unique project initiated Bill's abiding relationship with Holocaust survivors across the country and around the world. Tolerance education empowers millions of students to create a peaceful future so that the Holocaust, slavery, and similar acts of inhumanity are never again repeated. Bill's significant accomplishments have made him the recipient of numerous awards from governmental agencies, elected officials, as well as a highly respected ally of progressive leaders and organizations throughout the United States, Italy, France, Poland, Israel, and Jamaica. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest, Bill Tinglin. Bill, please join me. How are you, Bill? Welcome.
Fantastic, just great.
Welcome to Shmoozing with Avi. I am so impressed. I'm very grateful to Leah Wolinetz, who introduced us, because I am so incredibly impressed with the work that you do and, you know, how important it is, especially today. We are living in a world where anti-Semitism is on the rise, neo-Nazism is on the rise, right-wing fascism is on the rise all over the world, violence, Black Lives Matter. I mean, there are so many issues that we need to deal with in our society today. And you are doing so much to try and alleviate those issues and bring more understanding. Can you tell us, though, what is your background? How did you come to be the man you are today? Where were you born, and What inspired you to get involved in this particular field?
Thank you so very much, Avi, for having me at this wonderful moment in time. I was born in Jamaica, West Indies, and I came to the United States at a very young age. In the interim, I didn't know what racism was until I came to the United States. In my little island of Jamaica, whites, blacks, Indian, Chinese, we all go to the same school, perform the same activities when it comes to the youthfulness of our isms. But we wouldn't consider ourselves the ethnic group from whence we came. We just consider ourselves Jamaican. Arriving in the United States at a very young age, and I know what the separation of racism, or races were due to being associated with so many ethnic groups. So that's my small background coming from Jamaica in the United States, and here I am. Consider myself a statesman due to my work.
Where did you grow up?
Brooklyn, East New York, back in the 1970s. Still in Brooklyn, but closer to Brooklyn College.
And did you go to public school?
Yes, Hobby. I went to public school 292. At the time, I went to an all-boys high school. At that time, it was East New York Vocational Technical High School. During that time, we had to wear a white shirt, black pants, tie. It was an all-boys school. And yeah, there was a level of discipline when it comes to one's attire in which we had to send ourselves to or sent ourselves to. Fantastic moment in time.
And when you were growing up, was your family religious? Did you go to church? What denomination?
I came out of a religious family. Being Jamaican, I went to a Baptist church there in Jamaica. My mom sang on the choir. My mom is an entertainer. My dad is Cuban, was born in Cuba. My mom is half Welsh. Her father's from Wales. So I am kind of somewhat mixed. My father was born in Cuba. They both came to Jamaica back in the 1940s and 50s, met my mom, and here I am, 2 years after.
So when you were growing up, did you encounter racism? You know, I'm a child of Holocaust survivors who was born in the Bronx. So my whole life I heard about anti-Semitism. And when I was a young, boy growing up in the Bronx, I was in a Jewish neighborhood, so there wasn't a lot of anti-Semitism around us. But eventually, as I left, my nest, I did experience anti-Semitism, and to this day, on occasion, I do. Were you exposed to any kind of, did you know other ethnicities? Did you know Jews? Did you know about the Holocaust? And did you experience racism of your own?
I would say no, until I got to college, my college level. Then I knew exactly what the true essence of anti-Semitism. We had issues with the police, yes, but I wouldn't say at that time, I wasn't in the core of fully understanding the behavior of racism coming from whites, Chinese, blacks at that time, and here again until I got to college. So growing up in East New York, we were Italians, blacks, Spanish, and back in the 70s, around me, Avi, surrounded with all drugs and a behavior that was rather unseemly. And I grew up in that stuff, but I never participated. I didn't know I was involved in my place of worship, my church. So I was somewhat sheltered from certain behavior. And the strength and energy of love was inculcated in me from my relationship with God, my relationship with my church. So there is certain behavior that I was not necessarily privy to. So call it naive, possibly, but I was just not open to certain activities. So the core of understanding the essence of racism, initially, I would say, came to a full-fledged play during my college years.
So, where did you go to college? And tell us about what triggered this amazing interest in tolerance and working so hard to build bridges among people.
Let me share with you. My mom, my grandfather, who died at 100 years old, they came from a really giving and trying to mend and understand people. You know, that's the kind of relationship that I grew up in. It's more like a commune relationship back in Jamaica. Going to college here at John Jay, College of Criminal Justice, I was exposed to a lot of things. And when I was in college, let me just add this. When I was in college, I was working at a law firm, Robinson, Silverman, Pierce, Aronson, and Byrne. It was a Jewish law firm. And they, the law firm, paid my way to college. They saw something in me. At the time was Mr. Silverman. I cannot forget him. Mr. Silverman was the second person in charge at the firm, paid my way through college. And James Gill, you may have heard of the Gill Commission. Yes, James Gill, there also was very in tuned with my development of going to college and ascertaining my level of accomplishment. I then went on to become a criminologist, graduated from John Jay College, that is. And I did well during my years. My entertaining years of wanting to do more to help others, necessarily, I would say, came from my development, my youthful era from my mom and my dad and my grandfather. And it pushed me into wanting to give and to give and to give more. After graduating from college, I became in tune with the youth, wanting to work with the youth in an after-school program. And I did. That's what I did. And that's that's back in the late 1980s. And here I am today, still working with youth and people.
So when would you say was your first encounter with the Holocaust, with the enormity of the Holocaust, and with an actual, who was the first Holocaust survivor that you met? Very good,
very good. I was working at Madison Square Garden many years ago. I resigned from Madison Square Garden back in 2019. I was there for 29 years.
What was your position?
I was a director and a supervisor for event operations at Madison Square Garden. Knicks, Rangers, concerts, that's what I did. And I developed a relationship with many people, seeing 21,000 people per event. I was a people's person at that time, and I was able to develop a strong relationship with many. There was a gentleman, his name was Sean Hallahan. Sean was a football coach at Horace Mann High School, and we all worked at Madison Square Garden in the evenings. And I was a journalist. I was a writer also at part-time, doing after work away from Madison Square Garden. And Sean said to me one day, Bill, won't you do a story on how African Americans built Yonkers? He was from Yonkers. In the interim of my research, I met a wonderful woman. Her name was Sally Frischberg, a Holocaust survivor. That's close to 23 years ago. My life became revolutionized after meeting Sally Frischberg. My life became revolutionized because I became a changed man after having Sally Frischberg in my life. Thereafter, Sally and I became team workers, team members. She guided me, she showed me, she educated me. And Harvey, from that time until now, I was so engrossed in understanding matters of the Holocaust, what took place with the Jewish people during from 1929 to the ending of the war. I've met many, many Holocaust survivors thereafter. I became a speaker with Sally. I'm able to tell Sally's stories. I'm a speaker with the many Jewish events, also a speaker with the Council General of Israel. I'm on their speaking bureau. I am well known in Poland, well known in Israel, well known in the United States and Canada due to my work.
So before that, I assume, in 1993, you founded the School News Nationwide, SNN.
Yes.
So that I would love to hear a little bit about that, and then we'll come back to the Holocaust.
Okay.
So how did you come up? This was way before there were similar, things going on in the educational systems around the country. You were a pioneer.
Yes.
Can you tell us about coming up with the concept and how you were able to implement it?
Yes. Harvey, because I was a journalist, I, here again, meeting so many people in the educational system. I started an after-school program in one school in which we use television broadcasting, radio broadcasting, and newspaper publication to propagate the interests of reading, writing, math, and science. And this is what we did, Avi. We used the New York Times for reading. We got the hundreds of New York Times delivered to this particular school. We had the Daily News for sports, the Wall Street Journal we used to teach mathematics, and we used the New York Newsday also to teach everyday news. So this is what we did. While we were in the school, we're able to form a mini corporation. Let's say, for example, Public School 271. What we did, we were able to have Public School 271 Times. The students became the president, the secretary, and the treasurer, a regular corporation. We have our writers, we have our photographers, we have our weather people, and we'd go out to different communities to be able to interview the community and people just for them to be able to write their publication for this newspaper or this magazine. And in doing so, they'll have learned so much. We published our newspapers. We're able to distribute the newspapers to many other schools and many other organizations. At one time, we have a New York Times size publication. We call it, that was Public School 56 Times. Can't forget that. So that was our publication. Then we started doing interviewing African-American seniors whose ancestors were slaves, just to find out what their ancestors shared with them as children. And in the interim of that, we were able to meet Holocaust survivors. So we started interviewing Holocaust survivors. So it became a fulcrum, a globe of students now learning how to do interviews, being photographers, being investigative reporters. And at one time, Harvey, we had schools in Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx. We had after-school programs. We have day programs, after-school programs, and summer programs. Some of our schools, we had 300 students at one time or the other. We would have Holocaust survivors come in and speak. They'll be interviewed. We would have our own television broadcasting network. So yes, I was a pioneer in bringing television broadcasting on a large scale to the schools at that time.
Wow. I mean, I know that when my children were growing up in Florida, in South Florida, what your concept apparently infiltrated the entire educational system around the country.
It did.
Because my children were doing television and writing newspapers and newsletters and interviews and doing all of those things that obviously came from your brilliant vision. So please share with us how the transition from SNN happened to the Tour for Tolerance. And
Very
tell us
good.
about the Tour for Tolerance and what that's all about.
Good. Well, after we had School News Nationwide, Harvey, we created another organization that's called Words of Bonds. From the Words of Bonds, we had our television broadcasting network. And that's when Sally and all the Holocaust survivors joined us. I'm going to use the word, we became an influence to educate, empowered, and influenced students. Thousands, Harvey, thousands of students came through our hands. A few years after that, we came up with the word Tour for Tolerance, because we're now touring different communities, the Bronx, Staten Island, Queens, seeing thousands of students annually. Here again, Harvey, with after-school programs, we're in day schools, we were in the summer program schools, having our own institutions. And let me just share this with you also, Harvey. We started our program at 6 o'clock in the morning in our summer school program, in which there were 36 principals. All the faculties and the students had to learn how to shake a hand, how to sit in a chair, such as the first 25 years of my life is called the learning years. From 25 to 65 is called the earning years. From 65 till I passed on is called the golden years. What do you invest, John, Mary, and Paul? We invest our time, our skills, and our abilities. So we were able to create 36 principles in which all the faculties and the thousands of students that came through our hands, they were able to learn these principles. And until this day, many of them were now lawyers, doctors, president of corporations. They see me sometime, Mr. Tinglin, and they shake my hand, and they remember the great times that we have had. But let me just bring this into focus, Harvey. The important level of Tour for Tolerance came through the strength came through our Holocaust Survivors Initiative. Why? Because we know very well that Holocaust survivors, they are going and going and going. In a few more years, unfortunately, they'll be all gone. So we developed a concept. It's called the Tour for Tolerance Educational Initiative, in which we were able to teach Holocaust education in our program, in which we taught the importance and the relevance of don't sit on the sideline and don't do anything. How to, if you see something, share something. How we were able to get Holocaust survivors to speak, hundreds of Holocaust survivors to speak to our many different places of arenas, schools, places of worship. And here we are today. Today, Harvey, there's less than 35,000 Holocaust survivors remaining in New York. And we were able to come up with another initiative to get a tour bus. It's called the Tour for Tolerance Bus, to be able to visit schools, to bring in to teach Holocaust education, empathy, compassion, inclusion, and tolerance. It's difficult for many New Yorkers to leave their schools, get on a subway, go to certain places to hear lectures. So we joined our forces with the University of Southern California Holocaust Initiative Program through the Schuer Foundation. They are our partners. And we created a bus. It's called the Tour for Tolerance Bus, in which the bus is retrofitted with holograms, interactive technology, artificial intelligence, bringing that bus to your school or any schools there is. One bus could see 75,000 students or people per year. Could you imagine one bus? So if we have 35,000 Holocaust survivors remaining in New York, and we're able to have one bus, could you imagine 3, 4, 5, 6 buses? On each bus, Harvey, will be a Holocaust survivor, a liberator, an educator going to the school to be able to see 40 students per every 35 to 40 minutes. So from that, let's say, for example, Harvey, you have 500 students in your school. You pull up our bus to your school, we stay there for a day, we stay there for a week. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We will see your 500 students. Your 500 students will be able to see and hear the story of a live Holocaust survivor or a liberator seeing what took place in the past, because all on the bus will be virtual in conjunction with the live Holocaust survivors and liberator. But guess what happened, Harvey? The COVID situation started and it put us back a few years. So we were not able to do what we wanted to do. We are still trying to gather funds to be able to retrofit the bus. It's approximately $3.5 million. And we got stuck, not able to retrofit the one bus. So we have the bus, but we're still trying to get funds now to retrofit the bus. So this is where we are today, Harvey.
And that's approximately the cost, about $3.5 million per bus?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I know the technology is amazing. I've actually spoken to several people in the industry who are involved in creating these hologram and AI programs for the Holocaust survivors, whether it's out of USC and the Shoah Foundation or Artemis Tchaikovsky. There are several people involved in this particular world, which is amazing. You know, the Museum of Jewish Heritage down in Battery Park.
Yeah, matter of fact, Harvey, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, we're using their educational piece on the bus.
Oh.
The creators and the scientists who created the hologram, Stephen Smith and the USC Shoah Foundation, we're using their portfolio on our bus. But probably we need the funds to complete this bus.
Well, I was going to say, not only do you need the funds for one bus, I think there should be one bus in every state.
Absolutely.
Every state should have its own bus, and that bus should travel 365 days a year all over every state, because it should be mandated. This is maybe one of the most important things we could teach. And I think your work is so important that I want everybody to know about it. And everybody out there, tourfortolerance.org is the website you want to go to, and you can support Bill's work. Tell us a little bit more about the pre-COVID, just before COVID, when things were starting to move in the right direction. You know, how did you compile the bus? I mean, it's such a fascinating idea that you can get 45 kids in a bus with hologram technology, AI technology, artificial intelligence. And again, I've read about and heard about this technology where actual Holocaust survivors were turned into holograms.
That's right.
And you can actually communicate with them and
Yes.
ask them questions, and they answer you, and they may be long gone. And what a way to keep that legacy alive. How did you put that all together? Who did you approach other than USC, technologically even?
Well, we have been going in circles. This is the issue, Harvey. We have been taking Holocaust survivors to school to speak to students all over New York City, as I've shared with you earlier. Let's say, for example, particularly Sammy Steigman, many Holocaust survivors, but I could speak for Sammy, I could speak for Sally, I could speak for Samuel Bykoff. Sally go up to speak, Harvey. Let's say 700 loud kids inside the auditorium. And Sally with her short self go up to say, my name is Sally Frischberg. I'm a Holocaust survivor. There is something about Sally's voice, Harvey, all of a sudden, quietness. You could drop a pin in this loud audience, which is no longer loud. Could you imagine? So at that point, Harvey, we said to ourselves, it's somewhat challenging to be able to bring all these Holocaust survivors to the schools and at time bringing kids to see Holocaust survivors. How then best can we accommodate the students from moving themselves to the school, getting on the train, getting on other buses to hear Holocaust survivors speak and go to museums, but to create our own bus with our own Holocaust survivors and our own interactive technology, bringing it to the schools. That means the students no longer will have to get passes from their parents, packing lunches and doing all that. So this is the idea. It came to us We went to the Heritage Museum. We had a fantastic partner, thanks to Stephen Smith and Dr. Corey, the Shua Foundation and others. They said, come on aboard, Mr. Tinglin. We'll be able to work with you. And here we are still working with them, but we just lack the funds, Harvey, the vision and the mission is this. If we are able to have a fleet of buses, I believe that we'll be able to, thousands, millions of students will be able to actually see a Holocaust survivor or a liberator, hear their story, and to be able to repeat their stories thereafter. Professor Elie Wiesel says, if we failed to correct the past, eventually it will repeat itself. I believe that bringing Holocaust survivors, they will educate, influence, and empower others to be able to do the right thing, make the right decisions, and at the same time have a good outcome.
I think that your work is so important, and I would encourage you, and perhaps I can work with you if possible, to approach people like Michael Bennett, who is the senator from Colorado. He's a child of Holocaust survivors. Kamala Harris's husband, who is Jewish. There are many within the U.S. government today who have a very special connection to the Holocaust and education. And I think it's very important that you get the funding you need to put together this fleet of buses. Let me ask you how you see the connection between the Holocaust education and other ethnicities, other genocides, slavery, because I've always felt that the African American experience and the Jewish experience have so much in common, especially if you go back in history. The Jews and the African Americans stood side by side during the civil rights era with Martin Luther King. If anyone understands slavery, we just recently had our Passover holiday, which is all about freedom from slavery. And so the idea that there is so much shared experience between so many different ethnicities and people, people from different countries who also have escaped genocide and assorted persecution. Can you tell us a little bit about how that Holocaust education element also gets expanded into other people's experiences?
Absolutely. Harvey, I went to the Holocaust Museum in Florida many years ago to be trained, to become knowledgeable about the Holocaust and other atrocities, in which we have quite a few professors. I was there for a while, in which a few professors at the Holocaust Museum there in Florida taught me the A, the B's, and the C's, and everything about Holocaust. So there again, there's an academic level of achievement, plus my ongoing avenues of dealing with Holocaust survivors. Let me just move forward to answer your question in this level. There's a second stage of my life, in which my life became revolutionized for the second time. This is back in September of 2021. When I was in the Ukraine in Babi Yar. I was invited to come to Babi Yar by Holocaust survivor Samuel Bykov. I was in Bogdanovka. This is about a few hours away from Odessa. And Harvey, this part I'm about to share with you, because I become emotional sometimes. So if I shed a little tears on this, please forgive me. I went to Bogdanovka. Alongside with me was Holocaust survivor Samuel Bykov. I stood on the ground there in Bogdanovka, where 54,600 Jewish people were massacred in less than 45 days. I was on the blood-soaked ground, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening to me, listen to me. I was on a blood-soaked ground where 54,600 people, innocent people, were massacred. Babies, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. I was there. While I was walking with Mr. Bykoff on the ground, I kid you not, I hear something in my head that's saying, do what you can to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I looked up at Mr. Bykoff and said, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He said, did I hear what? I said, I heard something that says, do what you can to make sure that Holocaust like this doesn't happen again. And I became really nervous and I started to cry. Mr. Bykoff held me under my left arm and he says, son, we have work to do. So that revolutionary period of my life, Harvey, and those who are listening, strengthened me, energized me to move forward, to do what I possibly can with the God-given strength to get more information to the world about the atrocities of the past and for us to be able to do what we possibly can now to make sure that such atrocities never happen again. My point is this. Many years ago, I started my initiative working with Sally Fishberg and Holocaust survivors. In September of 2021, I was taken to another level. The push that's given to me to drive forward, to get Holocaust education in schools, but matters of tolerance, respect, empathy, atrocities of the past, for us to do whatever we can to make sure that slavery, what happened in Rwanda, what happened in Vietnam, what happened in Bogdanovka,
and in Syria, and the
again.
Uyghurs,
And in Syria,
and today in the Ukraine.
In the Ukraine.
We are now reliving exactly the same tragedies of massacres, mass massacres of the Ukrainian people. And this, is why your work is so important and why there's one word you didn't mention, which I would like to throw into the equation, which is acceptance.
Acceptance. Acceptance.
The idea that we must teach our children to accept those who are not like them.
Yes, acceptance.
And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your work. Tell us a little bit about your plans for the hopefully post-COVID era, as COVID starts to dissipate. We learn to deal with it. We are all or mostly getting our vaccines and our boosters. How are you planning to move forward, and what do you have coming up?
I ask of you who are listening to our show, please, Holocaust survivors. We have lost quite a few Holocaust survivors, unfortunately, due to COVID. I'm going to use the word some of my Holocaust survivors because we work so well together. And liberators, soldiers. Once you go on the Tour for Tolerance website, you'll see what we're talking about. I ask of you who are listening to this show, please, whatever you could do, help me. Help me to get this bus together, because there is a quote in the Torah. It says, if one can lead 1,000, two can put 10,000 to flight. I ask of you, help me to get this bus together, in which we'll be able to bring the Holocaust survivors. That's my vision and mission, to bring Holocaust survivors on this bus to literally all the schools we can here in New York first, and then to other places. That is my vision. That's my mission. On the educational sense, I'm coming out with a book. It's called Being Jewish in an Intolerant World. And the reason why it's called Being Jewish in an Intolerant World, ladies and gentlemen, in my era, I am able to see what took place with certain, I live in Brooklyn, New York, the hardcore anti-Semitism that's taking place around the world. The hardcore blackness, I use the word hardcore blackness, meaning the hate among Muslims, the hate among African Americans, the hate against Asians, hate, hate, hate. And if we are able to use the people who are about, I'm going to use the word, to become extinct, and that is Holocaust survivors, to take the lead in teaching empathy, compassion, inclusion, respect, and acceptance to the young minds on the Tour for Tolerance bus, I honestly believe that will save hundreds and thousands of lives through education, empowerment, and influence. I ask of you, please join me. The confluence, the essence, the organization, the skills that we all have all together is not from one person, but it's from the people that I'm going to use the word I literally bow to in appreciation. That is our Holocaust survivors. They can still speak. They can still influence. They still have clout. So if you're able to work with me to get this bus going, we'll be able to fulfill the obligation, because I'm using the word obligation because the Holocaust survivors, many a time they have said to me, Mr. Tinglin, we're going to pass the baton on to you. You're strong, you have a vision, and we see what you're able to do. So they have blessed me. Oh, let me tell you this, Harvey. I'll tell you this. This is important. I was at Madison Square Garden many years ago, back in, I think, when we had the Maccabee basketball Israeli game against the New York Knicks. And I was blessed by a rabbi in front of 21,000 people when I shared my initiative with him. And I told him what my plans are and what I am doing. He blessed me in front of 21,000 people. So that blessing, Harvey, that I have is here I am today.
Mm. Oh.
Could you imagine, Harvey, being blessed by a rabbi in front of 21,000 people?
I can, because I was blessed by Pope Francis in front of 25,000 people. So I do understand. Also for Holocaust-related work. And that's a separate thing we can talk about another time. You know, one of the things that has been overlooked until people like you and me is this idea that in the Holocaust, the resistance very often was not physical, because we didn't have the weaponry, we didn't have guns. Those who were able to find a gun or a knife or a stick or whatever tried to resist physically, but we all know that the resistance, the physical resistance was very difficult, the partisans in the forests. But the resistance was soulful. The resistance was mental. The resistance was emotional. The resistance was spiritual. The resistance was these amazing creative talents who were now jailed in these camps, who were prisoners in these camps, very often were able to create not only concerts, but plays and poetry, and use that resistance to keep themselves alive. And very often their survival was dependent on their ability to perform and present and create for other prisoners. And that was their food very often. And it's been talked about in plays like the Broadway show Indecent, that talks about the Lodge Theater ghetto and the performers there. And, you know, as I said, my father was in Auschwitz, and he was a survivor. And he remembers when a troupe of performers came into Auschwitz from Lodz, from Poland, and performed for the prisoners. And it really was able to create a spiritual resistance to what was happening. Um, so everybody, June 26th, go to tourfortolerance.org to find out more information or contact us at whyilovejewish.org. So before we go, Bill, again, I want to just touch one more time because I think it's very important. Um, I think that one of the problems with Holocaust education in this country especially, but around the world as well, is that so often the Holocaust is taught only from a Jewish perspective. And I think that you have touched upon something very important. That although the Holocaust and the genocide of the Jewish people in World War II is specific, the experience of genocide, the experience of slavery, the experience of persecution, the experience of concentration camps. To this day, there are concentration camps. As a matter of fact, in Russia now, they're calling them, filtration camps. In North Korea, there are concentration camps. How do you see this important work that you're doing being able to appeal to a wide group of non-Jews? How do you bring that Holocaust perspective to those who are not Jewish, who can also identify with that kind of persecution, slavery, extermination, genocide, etc.?
That's an easy question for me, and I'll tell you why. When Sally Fishberg, Sally Fishberg, my mentor, was coming as a child, coming in from Poland. She was coming to the United States. A child who couldn't speak English, just Polish. First of all, Sally hid in the attic, the barn of Mr. Zilski for 3 years. She didn't come down. She stood in that barn and her family, 15 other people for 3 years. Eventually, the Russians liberated them, and here now, Sally's on her way to New York. On the boat, the ship to New York, Sally says that it was a Polish woman who was sitting, it was a bunk bed, and she, Sally, went on the bed where the Polish woman was sitting. In Polish, the woman said to Sally, "You dirty Jew, if it was up to me, Hitler, I would kill all you Jews." Sally then said to me, in her story, she says, "Bill, an African-American matron came up to me, saw what happened. I didn't understand a word what the African-American woman was saying to me. She picked me up in her arm, and she rocked me. What she was saying to me, Bill, I don't know, but it was comforting how she rocked me. But I knew what the Polish woman said to me, 'You dirty Jew. It was up to me, I would kill all of you. Hitler should have killed all of you.'" And she said, "Bill, the African-American matron rocked me in her arms, probably saying, 'Don't worry, everything is gonna be all right. You are now free.'" When Sally told that story to many people, she said, "I then know that someone loves me. I then know that there were empathy in the world. I then know that there was compassion. I then know that there is love," she said. I'm saying that, Avi, and those who are listening, that you cannot remove yourself from the simplicity of love and or the order of love. Slavery, hate, whatever took place or taking place against despisement, I may say, of a heart. Though the heart does seek love. In the Torah, it says that man prefer darkness than light because their deeds are evil. However, there is still an understanding and a respect and an order and acceptance for each other. We just have to find the right key to turn it on. And the people like Sally, Sammy Steigman, Samuel Bykoff, and all the others who we're working with, they're able to provide that level of content of respect and acceptance
to all the listeners.
Hmm.
So answering your question, Avi, I would say that we are working under the hovering or the covering of love and acceptance. Thanks to the Holocaust survivors, our guide, I am asking you, those who are listening, help me to be able to provide this level or this scale in a broader sense. To get our bus together, help me to retrofit this bus. Please, I ask you. And you'll see, you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed because of the amount of youth that will be able to educate, influence, empower about the importance of acceptance, the importance of tolerance, the importance of empathy, inclusion, compassion. Please work with me on this.
On that beautiful note of love, I thank you, Bill, so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to tourfortolerance.org or contact us at whyilovejewish.org and support this man's effort, because this is the most important work we can do today to try to minimize the hatred and really learn more and mandate the education of tolerance and acceptance in the world today for all humanity. So thank you, Bill, for joining us. Stay tuned for many more wonderful programs at whyilovejewish.org and Shmoozing with Avi. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Avi, for having me. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.